your source for Vigano's every move. Vigano gave an interview with a German company called Deutsche Wirtschafts...
Yeah, that one.
Wirtschaftsnachrichten.
Well, it's in English.
It's awesome. Check it out. I mean, I don't know how you can fit that many letters in a word, but he gave this interview. LifeSite News published it, and as you can expect, being that LifeSite News published it, they're the antivirus publication. He has a lot of antivirus stuff to say. So,
well, they also published it without a disclaimer this time. I think they got a little heat for that, and they didn't like it. But Vigano, who is, since no one else is speaking in the Catholic sense to the church, Vigano seems to have taken this onto himself. He hasn't been able to push the Pope out, hasn't been able to shame him, of course. So he speaks as a Catholic bishop on Catholic subjects, and good for him.
It's more of the antivirus stuff that we've come to expect from Vigano, but it's a very extensive interview. He goes on about the New World Order. Now, the point is that this is a German business news publication, and so some of the audience the intended audience may not have been necessarily Catholics, maybe just people getting up to speed on what's going on in the Catholic Church, and so he tends to repeat himself from what he said on previous statements, But
he also speaks about, he's speaking to a German audience, and of course, what is he speaking to them about? The approaching apostasy of the German church. The people who were happy to bring you the Amazonian Synod and Pachamama. 1 in 3 Catholics are thinking of leaving the church in Germany. That is the latest poll. And of course, they're talking about things like giving out communion to anybody who shows up. And he's against that, like any Catholic is. He is, since he's addressing a German audience, he does take on some of the German subjects. Plus, every time Pope Francis, which is every day, does something heretical or borderline heretical or pushing Freemasonry, Vigano pushes back. Every time. That's why he sounds somewhat similar, because we get the program out of the Vatican, which is human fraternity, common home, human fraternity, common home, over and over ad nauseam.
Moving on to Pope Francis and his trip to Iraq. He was not martyred, and I will let Brett read a statement here in a second, but there was a Catholic news service cartoon. It was sort of like a political cartoon thing, and I'll put it on the screen. I don't really get the point of what they're trying to communicate here, but they've been very pro-virus. Catholic news service. Remember, they're the propaganda wing of the USCCB, and they're going to say that. So the USCCB, allegedly supports them. Not a single dollar to the USCCB. Don't let a single of your hard-earned dollars go to the USCCB. Don't support Catholic news service. This is completely absurd. I'm going to turn it over to Brett now, and you can read his statement.
All right. Well, the Pope went to Iraq, and he came back. My prognostication about the martyrdom of Bergoglio in Iraq was 100% wrong. He is still with us, spreading his indifferent universalism and his contempt for Catholic tradition. He even inadvertently did some good by shining light on the plight of the severely persecuted Church of Iraq. God is not yet finished chastising us with this man. My apologies for any false hopes that I might have encouraged. Please continue to pray for the soul of Jorge Bergoglio and for the church that he hates so thoroughly. To you, John.
And one good point to note is that Pope Francis wore a mask when he came off the plane, but the rest of the photographs, he was not wearing a mask, nor were the rest of the Iraqis or their leaders or anything like that. So, that's one positive we can take, because if Pope Francis isn't wearing a mask, we shouldn't have to wear a mask either. We're just following the example of our leader. around this time last year, a year ago, the churches were starting to shut down, and I know it was different dates for different dioceses across the United States and across the world, but this is about the anniversary, and I wanted to take a moment of silence in commemoration of the laity being locked out of the churches.
Well, let us have our moment of silence.
Protestant pastor John McArthur had some interesting stuff to say recently. Brett, over to you.
John McArthur is in a big tussle with the state of California about having his services open to his congregation. And he is foursquare anti-virus. We love him for that. And he seems to be flirting with some core concepts of Catholicism. For example, he has gone very public, repeatedly saying that religious freedom is not Christian.
It's not biblical.
It's not biblical, it's not Christian, and we don't believe in religious freedom because, as we know as Catholics, error has no rights. And so it's very refreshing to see some of our Protestant brothers do two things. One of them, deny religious freedom, and the other thing, which our bishops can't get around to, defy the state and their right to have anything to say about the worship of God. So, here's to you, John McArthur. We will be praying for your conversion.
And people ask why you talk about non-Catholics. Well, there's a reason. He's doing something that the Catholic bishops have not done. They're saying, please, oh, Governor of California, let us have more than 10 people in our several thousand seat cathedrals. Oh, please, just let us open up. But they're not doing anything about it. Here's someone who's actually doing something about it. I say that this is the type of interfaith dialogue we need to have. Is
absolutely
interact with these people and say, hey, let's all let's all band together, protest this government, open up all our churches simultaneously. What are they going to do? Are they going to shut us all down? We're all there at the same time? No, they won't. And in fact, we saw it in Minnesota. The governor backed down whenever the bishops actually spoke up.
And California, they lost in court. I'm a big believer in what he's talking about, which is anti-virus ecumenism. And we're not big ecumenists here, but for the virus, yeah, we're big anti-virus ecumenists. He's a good Catholic man. Milo has left the LMNOP lifestyle. John.
Well, Milo, I think he was in an interview with LifeSite.
Yes.
Was it LifeSite that he announced that he left the LMNOP lifestyle? Now, he did say that he was inspired by St. Joseph, which compares to another Joseph Chiambra, who also left the LMNOP lifestyle. Probably seen him on Taylor Marshall or maybe on Twitter. And with Milo, he said he's still living with his roommate. So that's one thing where I'm like, all right.
We're all worried about that.
He's all about shock value, too, so I don't know if he's serious or not, but if he is serious, it's very bad for the corruption network and the LMNOP promoters like the Jesuits and some of the OFMs. And so this is very interesting, and I know that a lot of Catholics, a lot of the Catholics, the Pachamama Catholics, were very critical of Milo, and they were saying, why are people celebrating this? And I think it's just...
only like the prodigal son coming home. That's the only reason we're celebrating.
So you can tell from their reactions that they don't think there's anything wrong with the LMNOP lifestyle, a sin that cries out to God or heaven for vengeance.
Absolutely.
It's very interesting.
Well, it is interesting, and we're really getting some very prominent people. You mentioned, of course, Milo Yiannopoulos, Joseph Chiambra, and we can't forget Michael Voris. Love him and hate him, but yes, that's another ex-homosexual who is doing his best for Mother Church.
Yeah, and actually I watched Milo's interview with Voris, I think it was like 2 years ago or so, yes. And it was a very interesting interview. Say what you will about Church Militant Michael Voris, but that was a very interesting interview. And at the end, Michael Voris encouraged Milo to leave that lifestyle, and you could tell Milo was very conflicted. he was serious about it too. He was like, I just can't do it right now. And Michael Voris, he was saying, you need to leave, and maybe Voris had something to do with it.
Maybe he did. Maybe
Who knows? And if that's the case, great job. The Archbishop of Dublin, Ireland, forbids priests from privately giving Holy Communion during the current lockdown. What do you have to say about that, Brett?
Heretic.
Yeah, and if
Resign your office.
well, I do call for him to resign. And if that's not enough, just whenever he was named the Archbishop, LifeSite News released an article that he favored women deacons, and he favored the blessing of rings for LMNOP couples. So I think
definitely is a heretic.
That's enough to confirm that he's not Catholic. Maybe there's a close local Unitarian Universalist church.
Yes, he could go there and be very comfortable and happy.
Yeah, and they would be more accepting of him. But in Ireland, why don't these people drive him out of the cathedral once the lockdown ends? They say, okay, now it's safe to go out, and we're going to get rid of our bishop.
Well, the Catholic Church doesn't work that way, unfortunately.
Well, maybe in the Francis Church it would, though.
Well, in Francis Church, he did get rid of Bishop Holly in Memphis. He was late of D.C. and one of McCarrick's crew, and he made a terrible, terrible mess. And there was an uprising among the priests.
Yes.
And to you priests who are watching, both of you, one of you, none of you, you have the power to save the church. You can compel good behavior from your bishop. You can put the Vatican in a corner. It's up to you to do it. And it's up to us as the laity to support you. So let's get out there and do it.
Yeah, that can't be underestimated, the voice that the priests have. Sometimes they say, I can't, I'm just a parish priest, whatever.
Well, one guy can.
Well, yeah, but they can't.
Even one guy can.
Could.
Yeah, one guy, maybe not, two or three. Wherever two or three are gathered, you know who's there with them. Especially those who are consecrated to his service.
And you get two or three good priests, you're going to have an army of lay people behind you.
Absolutely.
The thing with Hawley was he said he wasn't part of the Rainbow Network.
Right.
And they didn't even kick him out over...
No, they kicked him out because he went and he just totally upset the apple cart in the diocese. Everybody who was one place... It was a change of underwear.
He transferred
You change your underwear with him. He'll change his underwear with the next guy. Yeah, they just transferred everybody and everything. Brought in a priest from Canada to be his second in command, who was a very odd man, and he just totally bogs the place up. Whereas, I guess if you're Stowe, I guess they think you're doing the good job.
Well,
Lexington.
His priests support him, though. They signed that LMNOP statement.
Yes,
but I think with Hawley, it just shows that...
there is a line. It can be crossed.
Well, yeah, and if your priests don't really like you... I don't know, it's almost like it's a popularity thing. Like, if your popularity goes so low, then they're like...
No, you mean your social credit score.
Cardinal Sarah gave an interview last week, and I'm not even going to post a link to it. It's not even worth reading. He says blind obedience. He's a Pope Francis, is awesome, and all this stuff. And
he called people who brought up the fact that there is division in the church. He called them the devil. An insult worthy of his master Francis himself. He was I don't know. Don't read the interview. Just write Cardinal Sarah off. Don't go see him. Don't buy his books. Don't support him. Except, of course, when he says something Catholic. And he does that, but then he crabs back immediately from it because he's a Benedict man.
Well, and I did find a quote from Our Lady of Good Success. Now, This was from, the 1500s? Or was it somewhere around there, several hundred years ago? I just want to read that and see what you think and who it would particularly apply to if it applied to this era of the church. Our Lady of Good Success says, "The devil will try to persecute the ministers of the Lord in every possible way, He will labor with cruel and subtle astuteness to deviate them from the spirit of their vocation, and will corrupt many of them. These depraved priests, who will scandalize the Christian people, will make the hatred of bad Catholics and the enemies of the Roman Catholic and Apostolic Church fall upon all priests. This apparent triumph of Satan will bring enormous suffering to the good pastors of the Church. In this supreme moment of need of the Church, the one who should speak will fall silent. Okay, so the Vatican has banned private masses at St. Peter's Basilica. Brett, how does that affect different things that are going on at St. Peter's?
Well, St. Peter's is one of the largest churches in the Western world. It has many, many altars. And the practice from time immemorial till the 22nd of March was that a priest could go in and have what's called a private mass. Now, it's a private mass, which means he is saying the mass for himself. But since there are thousands of tourists there at almost all hours, anyone can attend these masses. But, of course, we can't have that anymore. So now, instead of using all the side altars, there's going to be one mass in one of the altars, and all the priests must concelebrate. And of course, that's in the Novus Ordo form, since there is no concelebration in the Mass. When I say the Mass, I mean the traditional Latin Mass. So when I say the Mass, that's what I mean. So that Mass has been banned in the upstairs of St. Peter's Basilica. But it's still allowed in the catacombs. As a matter of fact, right behind this door, we can step through to the one chapel in the whole downstairs that is allowed to have the Latin Mass. And it's about the size of this room. It might be a little bigger, but not much. The one positive thing about that is it is the room, the wall is where the bones of St. Peter are kept. So that's a good thing. So what will happen? The priest of the Vatican, the priests, the bishops, the cardinals of the Vatican have to put their foot down. Because if they don't, this will just be the start. Now, there's no reason for us to panic now. But if they just go ahead and do this and say, oh, ma obediencia, then we're in big trouble. So that's one man's opinion. Take it for what it's worth. And as we explained earlier, it doesn't work that much.
Well, and I think the one person who did still have faith in the Vatican was Cardinal Sarah, who is now no longer in the Vatican. And so my expectations of the priests putting their feet down, not a great chance.
Oh.
And, for these things, I'm not, super outraged. I should be, but I'm just kind of apathetic towards these things at this point because that's my perspective. Rome has lost the faith. And, I mean, it's a sad thing to see, but, we can rebuild it. And I got evidence. The FSSP, January 2021, they had 8 FSSP seminarians who are ordained to the subdiaconate. And this is by Archbishop Cordileone of San Francisco.
Good deal.
On March 12th, they were ordained to the deacon. The same group of subdeacons were ordained to the diaconate by Bishop Strickland.
Hey.
And so keep note of these bishops' names. And they both traveled to Lincoln, Nebraska. So this wasn't a thing where they were like, all right, the FSSP is going to come to my cathedral. They intentionally traveled to Lincoln, Nebraska, which isn't close for either of them, and to do this ordination. And 8...
You know why? Because Bishop Connolly is back. He's back from his mental health break, and he is carrying on with his flirting with tradition. He's a believer in tradition, and we hope he becomes he becomes more and more a believer in tradition. So that's why they went. So there are, and speaking of tradition, a new TLM church, a new TLM service in South Carolina, in the middle of South Carolina. So there's just one more.
Well, and the more that I read about this stuff on Twitter, and I don't mean to go on about this, but on Twitter there is a lady who is from New York. I think, where's Bishop DiMarzio's diocese?
Yes,
Is it Brooklyn? So she said that Bishop DiMarzio is very friendly to the Latin Mass community. He even donated like a vestment to the community, and he's kind of a mediocre bishop, right?
He is under a Vos Estis investigation, as a matter of fact,
Yes.
for being a cover-up bishop. We don't know if he is or not. Can't say, but he is under investigation.
So if even the mediocre bishops are friendly towards the Latin Mass, I think we're really gaining a lot of traction, and it's a really positive sign for the future. And I'm going to leave you on that closing thought, so thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Brett. This has been EVTN News. We are the laity,
and we will not be silent.